Hi everybody, Jarrett here. I'm Executive Director of the Cleveland Museum of Natural History Trout Club. Today I'm at the Castalia State Fish Hatchery in Castalia, Ohio. We're going to do a little walk around here with the hatchery manager, Andy Jarrett. So the Castalia Hatchery is really the foundation of the Ohio steelhead fishing program. The fish are raised here up to a smolt type size before they're stocked in the various streams around the shoreline of Lake Erie. But we're going to get started here and do our tour, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
You guys are here at the Castalia State Fish Hatchery today. This is my normal first tour stop. This is our blue hole here at the hatchery. It's one of several blue holes in the area, which are basically big springs or big aquifers where there's an underground river coming up out of the ground. Our spring is about 30 feet down to what looks like a bottom where the water percolates up through. You can see over here in the channel, the water's going out of our blue hole and it feeds into the building. The water is about 50 degrees year-round. It's almost void of oxygen because it doesn't have a chance to mix with the air, and there's also high nitrogen levels. So the first thing we need to do is aerate the water, which we'll see inside the building how we aerate. But a little folklore about the blue hole. Of course, there's a blue hole in Castalia that was open for years as a tourist attraction. Ours is pretty similar. Ours was actually man-made over 100 years ago, and it went to the Ohio Supreme Court fighting over water rights because of the scarcity of this quality water in the area. It's kind of the whole reason we're here at Castalia and the reason that we grow all the steelhead and rainbow trout that we do. So we're still up here close to the blue hole. What we're going to do next is walk inside of our raceway building, which is also the location of our pumping system. I didn't mention in the first part, the state of Ohio bought this hatchery from a private company in 1997. So we've been here about a little over 20 years now. In 2012, we did $7 million worth of renovations on the hatchery, which included most of what we're going to see next. The big portion in here is our pumping system. You'll notice there's two big pumps that feed over to our hatchery building, and then there's two big pumps that feed into our raceway building. I'm trying to go over a little of this now because it gets kind of noisy with the pumps going. But as we go in, you'll be able to see it, and then we'll talk about more down at the other end. So as you continue on down the building, if we look back behind us, back towards the blue hole again, you'll see those aeration columns where the piping's going into the column. Inside those are lots of little plastic rings which help to aerate the water, add lots of oxygen, and also remove the nitrogen from the water. After it falls in, it starts into our raceway out here, and we've got about 900 feet. There's a total of about 50,000 cubic feet of rearing space out here. As we start through, you're going to see lots of small trout, which will be next spring's steelhead stockings. They'll be in here for about a year's time.
How old are these at this point?
These hatched out in March and April.
Okay, so these here hatched
about 3 or 4 months old now.
3 to 4 months old.
So these are fingerlings, 3 or 4 months old. They will stay in the building. Right now it's July. They're going to stay in here until next April when we start stocking them out as steelhead. At that point they'll be about 7 or 8 inches long. As we continue to walk down through the building, you'll notice there's a couple different spots where the elevations change. A couple things about these spots. First off, there's a screen and there's a collection area where a lot of the fish waste will be collected that we can vacuum out. And then the waterfall helps add some extra aeration as it goes into the next section again. These are kind of divisors. We call them the upper, middle, and lower raceway as we go through. And like I said, there's about 900 feet of total length in here. The building was put up in 2012 along with a lot of the other renovations. We used to get a lot of sunlight in here, had a lot of trouble with algae and predators, and the fish can actually get sunburned, which is something a lot of people don't realize. And we had issues with the fish getting too much sun. So it's helped out a lot. Of course, it also protects from the leaves falling and any of the other outdoor elements that we had to deal with before. And basically the principle between the principal idea and the baffles, if you notice, they don't go all the way to the bottom. Those baffles help keep a lot of the water flowing down towards the bottom of the raceway. So any leaves or debris or fish species, anything else that does end up in the raceway, it helps keep sweeping it down to our collection area. Another thing you'll notice up above, we have 2-inch drop pipes with valves on them. As we get into the springtime and our densities and our pounds of fish get really heavy, we'll need some extra oxygen, extra aeration added to the water. And these are points where we're able to run blowers and hook up air grids to add extra oxygen all the way through the raceway. The crowding screen that you see here, you'll notice it has these soft bristle brushes on the ends. These go inside the raceway when we're getting ready to load fish up. Those bristles will hug the walls. That way the fish can't get around them as we push them down, but it's not going to smash them either. Once we get a big batch of them crowded up against one of the other streams, like this one in the water, we'll use this basket to get a big basket of fish, and from there we can just use nets dipping into the basket. We'll have a scale set up and a loader and start loading the fish into trucks to haul out to the different lakes and reservoirs and streams from there. We'll go in here a couple times a day with the bristle brush to clean. Any dead fish that are on the section is going to collect on the stream. We'll be able to keep tabs, keep track of numbers that are dying. If for some reason there's a higher than usual amount of fish that start dying, then we can take a better look at them, make sure they don't have a disease. So right now we are contracted with Skretting. Every few years we put a state contract out for bidding on fish food. Skretting is our current contract. All of our feed is specified to be real high protein, high in calories. The conversion rates are pretty unbelievable if you think about it. We actually, for every pound of food that we feed our fish, we get a pound of gain, or a pound of weight gained on the fish. So, this is one of our feeders that we're kind of proud of here at Castalia. We made these ourselves a few years ago. Castalia, because of our large volume of fish, we feed about 100,000 pounds of feed a year. And before we came up with the solution with these little feeders, we were using buckets and scoops, and everything was done by hand. It's, hard on our elbows and shoulders. So a few years ago we designed these. These use a 4-stroke leaf blower. So all we got to do is change the oil every once in a while. And the feed is easily opened and dispersed as we go down through. To have the valve controls we were always taught to make sure you're feeding the fish and not the raceway. The fish won't always be spread out evenly through the raceway. So as you go through, you can open and close this valve to make sure that you're only feeding the fish. Fish are kind of funny about making sure that they feed on the food before it gets to the bottom. They're not like a carp or a catfish or some of the other fish that'll pick food off the bottom very much. So you have to make sure you're feeding it slow enough, and there is an art to feeding them, that you make sure that they're eating it and it doesn't get to the bottom and just lay down. So normally during the week we feed them like this 4 times a day. On the weekends we just have somebody come in for a short while just to throw a batch of food quick, make sure everything's going good. Feed rates are calculated weekly. It's all based on growth. Like I said before, every pound of feed that we feed them, we get about a pound of gain. So we can do the math pretty easy to convert and figure out how many pounds of fish are in there for the week and how much food we need to feed them. Lights on in here. So you're just coming into our new hatchery building. This was also part of the renovations. In this building we have about 5,000 cubic feet of raceway space or tank space. In our old building we only had about 1,500, and we didn't have near enough space for raising and starting all the steelhead, in particular steelhead that we did. We have a room over there. It's a disinfection room. You can see it only has a part of the door through it. We'll have separate parties working on each side. We disinfect everything with iodine before it comes into our hatchery, just in case there's a disease or something in the water that we brought in with those eggs. Make sure that it's killed before we bring it into the hatchery side of the building. For our eggs, we use Heath trays, and these all have a stack of water on them that we can run 5 gallons a minute of water through. All the eggs will be pinned between these 2 screens and trickle through. We'll keep the eggs in here until they hatch. After they hatch, we will screen off the broken egg skins, as well as any dead eggs that didn't hatch. We'll put them back in here. They take about 10 days because they got a big yolk sac on their belly that they'll feed off themselves for that first 10 or 14 days. If we move them out too soon, they'll actually pile on top of each other, and that big yolk sac acts as an anchor, and they can't really get up or swim away, and they'll actually pile on top of each other and suffocate. So we have to make sure we keep them until most of that yolk sac is absorbed, and then we move them out to the other tank. Right now we've already removed the fry tanks, which are a smaller aluminum trough that's actually sit on top of these bigger ones, and they'll be in those fry troughs just for a couple weeks. Just it makes it easier where they're all closer together and we can work off of them. Usually if you have a lot of mortalities or a lot of fish that die, it's going to be that first week or so when we first hatch out and bring them out here. At that point, we'll move them into these bigger tanks, and we just keep spreading them around in here until they run out of room. And then eventually we move them over to where you just saw them on the other side. As far as feeding them when they're small, we use all belt feeders. The nice thing about using the belt feeders, small fish, just like small human beings, they need fed a lot of times a day. They eat small amounts, but they eat it often. So for us to come up here and just hand feed, we would have to do it all day long on and off. With these, you can pull the belt back like I just did. They have a clock mechanism in them that is, as well as a spring. So they'll slowly pull this belt in. So over 12-hour time frame, this belt's just sliding back in and getting wound back up. So if you put a line of food on here, you're basically feeding them for 12 hours without having to deal with any physical hands-on activity with them. So we'll fill these belt feeders in the morning, clean the tanks, and then we can pretty much walk away for the day. Our fish truck that you're looking at right now, we actually have 3 different sizes of fish trucks. The Freightliner in here is a 1,200 gallon tank. That's our biggest fish tank. We also have a couple smaller ones that go on mid-size and a regular size pickup truck. All of our fish trucks have air stones in each tank and bottles of oxygen like you would go and get at the welding companies and torch companies. And we feed oxygen into those air stones to keep oxygenated water, as well as an aerator that's turning the water over inside. You'll notice on the side of the truck there's 6-inch cam locks and valves. The back end of each truck will have some 6-inch pipes on it that we can hook up when we get to the lake and open those valves up, and then the fish will just naturally slide down the hose and into the lake. We also have a couple other tricks and tools we use. We'll use a soft bristled brush. There's normally a few fish that don't really want to go out of the hose. You can coax them out as long as you're using a softer broom. And the other thing is to make sure that when you're parking on a boat ramp or wherever you're stocking, make sure that the truck's tilted the best you can to help coax them out of the truck and into the lake as well. Inside the Raceway building, when we first started by the blue hole, we have another set of those aeration towers up there. The other set of pumps in the building push water underground over here. The water gets aerated before it enters the building that we were just in. You'll also notice there's a truck fill on the side. This is where we fill our trucks up when we're getting ready to haul fish out. These are also the small aluminum fry troughs I talked about that we already had out of the building. This is where we would first put the freshly hatched fish when we move them out inside the building. So over here we'll go take a look at our fish loader, and I'll also point out, if you happen to notice, how much smaller. This was our original hatchery building that I told you about before we got the renovations done. And we were relying on going and getting baby fish fingerlings from Michigan most years because we just didn't have the space to hatch them all out ourselves. So that's been a big advantage now that we have the new building. The fish loader that's sitting over here, you'll notice it has an electric motor on it. The chute up at the top end there, when it's sitting down inside the raceway where we're crowding those fish up, that chute will be hanging over one of our tanks for our trucks with the lid open, and we're able to dump fish into this and take them up and put them right inside the truck without having to lift them up. We'll take a little closer look here, but basically it's an enclosed aluminum loader, and inside there's a rubber belt. So when we dump the fish in this lower end, they're not able to flop out or escape. So as we're weighing fish and dumping them in, they go on here, and you can see this rubber paddles help push them up to the top end where they'll fall out into the truck and load them for us.